Elizabeth I was born in 1533. She became Queen of England in 1558 after her sister's death. Growing up, Elizabeth was not anticipated to be queen because she had her brother and her half-brother and her sister before her. She was third to the crown. When Elizabeth became queen in 1558, she entered into a position where she was unwelcomed as a female monarch amongst male monarchs. Elizabeth's life as a queen was full of many victories, but it was also full of many difficulties and challenges. But as a female monarch, the first person in her position to be queen, Elizabeth ruled with strength, with heart, and she was determined to make England the best that it could be. My thesis is on her speech to the troops at Tilbury. My paper is on her speech to the troops at Tilbury. And my thesis says, in her speech to the troops at Tilbury, Elizabeth exemplifies the strength required of the body politic, defies the laws of gender, and fearlessly steps into the role expected to be filled by a male monarch. And by the body politic, I'm essentially in my paper talking about how England as a whole collectively did not welcome the idea of a woman in power, because women were viewed to be to rule underneath their husbands. And in Queen Elizabeth's case, it would have been, if she had chosen to wed, it would have been underneath whomever she chose to marry, who was king. But since she did not choose to marry and she remained a virgin, this body politic for her really involved who she was as a woman. And I believe that as she grew into the role of being queen, she highly utilized her intellect to help her rule. She didn't allow her court advisors to rule for her. Instead, she chose to be the sole ruler of the kingdom with many advisors in different aspects. She took the reins on a lot of the things, a lot of the political matters that were required in England at the time. And at her speech to the troops at Tilbury, Elizabeth speaks of the desired ruler that England essentially wanted, and she addresses herself in a way that is deemed powerful and unexpected of a female monarch, when she says that I know I have the body but of a weak and feeble woman, but I have the stomach of a king, and of a king of England too, and take foul scorn that Parma or any prince of Europe should dare invade the borders of my realm. And in saying that, she's essentially addressing the fact that she knows that she's a female, and as a female, there's certain stereotypes placed upon her as a ruler, and she's just letting her troops know that she's not fearful to be on the line. She's not fearful to fight for them as a king would, whether that be physically or metaphorically. I think is irrelevant, but the fact that she, as queen, above her soldiers, above essentially any subject, she chose to step out of her castle and go onto the battlefield and present this speech in the middle of her troops. My sources are pretty much to support the fact that as a female, Elizabeth ruled well and did so under many pressures. the first source that I used was and the source that I used the most was that I found most helpful was Susan Doran's article that was essentially discussing what it meant for a female monarch to rule amongst male monarchs, and the difficulties that Elizabeth faced stepping into that role. And then Helen Castor spoke about the exception to the rule and how Elizabeth was the one person that was the exception to the rule of females being able to rule and do so successfully. Again, in a place of male monarchs. And then Rebecca Lemon discusses the personal life and the internal turmoil that Elizabeth underwent as a female monarch in a male society, in a male-ruled society. And then David Moss takes a different approach in just kind of speaking to the physicality and the appearance of the iconic Queen Elizabeth, where she is wearing the big white gown with the poofy everything, but then talks about how there's so much more to Elizabeth than that, as exemplified in her address to the troops at Tilbury. Overall, my paper just shows how Elizabeth as a female stepped into a role that was expected to be filled by a male, and in stepping into it, she did so fearlessly, and she ruled her nation well, and so well that she's still being spoken of in today as a historical example of what it looks like for a female to successfully rule